Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and I'm looking forward to diving into this topic, this awesome ranking video, ranking my top 5 favorite movies that take place in the future. And I can't just do this alone. In fact, he reached out to me with these ideas that this would be really fun to do. So joining me today is Mike from Married Movie Reviews. How you doing, Mike?
Hey Durbin, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to diving deep into these future movies that were set in the future. Maybe they were made in the past and set in nowadays time, but those were technically future-based movies, so I'm definitely ready to talk some future talk with you.
Those are probably my favorite ones, the ones that are made back in like the 80s that take place in the faraway future of 1996 or 2004. I think those are my favorite kind of future movies.
They were so optimistic about the future. And
are they very pessimistic? Either way, it's pretty hilarious to look at their predictions and stuff.
Yes.
Well, Mike, right before we dive into everything, tell us a little bit about your channel and how we can find you.
Well, you can find us at Married Movie Reviews on YouTube. Me and my wife do a lot of movie reviews. I break down trailers, and we just have a lot of fun talking about movies.
That's it, right there. We have a lot of fun talking about movies, and I'm so glad to have you on. Thank you for reaching out to me with this idea, because right here on my channel, we're talking about movies that take place in the future, our top 5. But right now, if you click the link and go over to Mike's channel, you're going to see another video of him and I talking about our favorite time travel movies. So you definitely want to be checking that out. That said, let's dive into this. Both Mike and I, we have our honorable mentions. So Mike, kick it off with your honorable mentions.
Well, I got 3 honorable mentions. The first is Waterworld with Kevin Costner. I just thought it was an interesting...
Oh, I forgot about Waterworld!
I thought it was an interesting concept to have just the whole Earth just be flooded. And it's a weird concept, but it worked. It may not be like the greatest movie, but it's a fun concept.
It is a fun concept. I remember being a kid, I walked into the theater and I thought, but God promised not to flood the world again.
Right, exactly. Is this in the past, but it's in the future at the same time? What's going on? Another one of my honorable mentions is Equilibrium with Christian Bale. This is a movie where it's like everyone is basically... emotions are outlawed, and they have to take a pill to control their emotions. And it's just a really dystopian type of future, and I kind of like those future set movies for some reason.
Yeah, those are fun. They're awesome.
Yeah. And the last one, it pains me to put it as just an honorable mention because it is one of my favorite movies of all time. But I had to put it here because it's more of a space travel movie than just a future movie, and that's Interstellar. Basically, like the Earth.
That is a good one.
Yeah, like all the crops are dying, so humans just have to leave Earth, and it's kind of a bleak future, but you know it's still set in the future. There's a lot of technology in that movie that we don't have or may never have. So yeah, it's an interesting concept for sure.
Here's the interesting thing about Interstellar. Interstellar is also on my list, but not my future movies list. So everybody's gonna have to go over to your channel to see Interstellar on my time travel list, because Interstellar is one of those fascinating movies that it takes place in the future, but it has those time travel elements in it that I thought were interesting. So I threw that in the time travel category, but I think it fits nicely in both.
Yeah, it really does.
Well, here are some of my honorable mentions. Wow, can Durbin talk today? Here are some of my honorable mentions. My first one is, and I kind of made these as a tie together, the first 2 Hunger Games movies. And I didn't put the third one in there because they took the third book and they split it into 2 movies. So they took the boring setup of the first half of the book and made it one long, boring movie. And then they took all the action and made that the second movie, which the action is interesting, but it was disjointed now. So it just, I don't know. That just absolutely didn't work for me. But I did enjoy the first 2. It's a really sad and depressing future, really. But I just thought it was an interesting look and an interesting take on the future. And I enjoyed the books, and I actually kind of enjoyed those first 2 movies.
Yeah, the Hunger Games, it was a really... The first one is my favorite of the whole series. Yeah. But yeah, what an interesting idea to have, you know, kids have to fight each other. It's terrible, but it's interesting.
It is
and
terrible.
It makes for a good story, I guess.
So interesting is how the future is divided up. And I'm curious because this whole series is about like America and how weirdly it's divided up. And I was kind of wondering, in that future, how's the whole world divided up? Like, how's everybody else looking? And so I think it's kind of an interesting future, even if I did not like the final movie. My next one is Total Recall. And I did want to put this higher up on my list, but there were just other future movies that I really liked. But you can't beat Arnold Schwarzenegger going to Mars. Like, you just can't beat that. Well, actually you can. I have a whole bunch of movies on my list that do beat it, but I have to mention it at least as a mention because it's such a classic. I love Schwarzenegger, and Total Recall was a great movie.
I still always think of that scene where he pulls the thing out of his nose. For some reason, that scene always just sticks in my mind.
Yeah. It definitely is a movie filled with those scenes that can just stick with you, like, huh. My other favorite future movie in my honorable mentions here is Minority Report. I really like this movie. I thought Tom Cruise did a great job in it. I thought, what an interesting look at this whole concept of these precogs, seeing crime before it happens. And what an interesting plot. Can you really punish a crime before a crime is committed? I mean, sure, probably good to prevent the crime, but I mean, my gosh, they're like locking these people away, and they haven't even really technically done anything wrong yet, and it has so many interesting questions. But beyond that, I like the future that it presents. I mean, wherever they go, their eyes are being scanned, so like, you're being tracked wherever you go, kind of like us with our cell phones now. And, you know, him going through the mall and it's scanning his eye and advertisements that say, John Anderton, thank you for stopping by the mall. Would you like to sample some of this cologne? And the way I would hate a world with advertising like that, by the way. I would hate it.
Oh, yeah.
I would hate that. Still a very fascinating look, and I thought it was a good movie. My wife hates it, but I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, I liked it too, and I actually might be bringing this one up in a few minutes.
Nice! I'm looking forward to that. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our rankings now, going from our number 5 to our number 1 being our most favorite. While we're doing our rankings, think about yours and leave it in the comments. So let's start with you, Mike. What is your number 5?
My number 5 is Demolition Man, starring Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. Now, this one came out in 1993, and it's basically, you know, Sylvester Stallone's a cop, and he's chasing down this criminal, Wesley Snipes. He catches him, they imprison him, but they put them both in suspended animation, like basically freezing them. Wesley Snipes wakes up in the future, and it's a non-violent future. Like there's no crime pretty much. And there's all this weird stuff going on, like the seashells. I still don't really know how they're used. I don't know if I want to know.
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells.
And so Sylvester Stallone is woken up to, you know, because he's really the only cop that can handle Wesley Snipes' character. So they bring him back, and it's just culture shock for both parties. Sandra Bullock is one of the cops that is in the future, and she's just trying to learn the ways of the past and how to catch a really bad guy. And it's a really fun, interesting cop movie that takes place in the future, and I love this movie.
You know, the thing that's interesting about future movies like that, I'll talk more about Demolition Man later because it's also on my list, but what's so interesting, like what you talked about Sandra Bullock being curious about the past and specifically about the 90s, it's interesting, like, they did the same thing in iRobot, where Will Smith was kind of obsessed with, like, the early 21st century, the early 2000s, the late 90s. I feel like sometimes in those future movies, they threw in a character that was obsessed with the time period we live in, so we can feel like there's some grounding there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just think that's cheesy. Why are you doing that? I mean, I live in the year 2017, and I don't dress like the 80s, and I'm not fascinated with the 80s. I mean...
And the whole references to Taco Bell.
That was the best, though.
That was so awesome.
Best. The winning of the franchise wars. Every restaurant is Taco Bell. Oh, I love it. Coming in at my number 5, I have The Fifth Element. I love The Fifth Element. I cannot pronounce the director's name, and I've really just given up trying, but it's like the one movie from this director that I actually really, really like. I haven't liked, like, Valerian, I didn't really like that one that much, and I didn't like Lucy that much, but The Fifth Element is a movie that has absolutely stuck with me through the ages, and to me, it's just this absolutely timeless movie. I love the flying cars, I love the whole interesting aspect with the life from other planets. There's a fifth element. The fifth element's love, and we're going to use this to ward off evil and all that stuff. And I just kind of love the philosophy behind it. And Bruce Willis is so great in this movie as Corbin Dallas. And Chris Tucker, every time that guy does his high-pitched scream in this movie, I just find myself laughing hysterically. Mila Djokovic, I loved what she did with her role in this movie. I mean, the whole movie, I loved it. I don't know how you feel about The Fifth Element. It's weird and it's crazy, but it's just one of those movies I know I could pop in and I don't have to think too hard about it, and I could just sit back, relax, and enjoy it.
It's Corbin Dallas. My number 4 is, like you talked about earlier, Minority Report. This is one of Steven Spielberg's movies, and it is a great one in my opinion, starring Tom Cruise. Man, the concept of the pre-crime, or is that what they're called? Pre-crime unit?
Yeah, pre-crime unit with the pre-cogs and all the weirdness they got going on there.
The whole thing about stopping crime before it happens, such an interesting and great concept, but again, you bring in the morality, like, did they really commit that crime, or were they really going to commit that crime? We'll never know, but they're being sent to prison.
Yeah, because any number of variables could get between them and that crime.
And there's not much more you can say about it. It's such a fascinating movie to me, and some of the technology that they have in it, it's just, it might be a little too far. That stuff might be further in the future than what the movie's set in, but you know, it's still such a great movie.
That is true. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah. I don't have too much to add to that either, since I talked about it earlier, but I do love Minority Report. It is a good movie. Coming in for me at my number 4 is The Martian. And I was actually quite surprised by The Martian when I went and saw this. I mean, I guess I didn't know what I was gonna expect. I mean, I thought the trailers were fun. I liked Matt Damon's humor in it and all that stuff, but I think what really just made me love this movie is you have this character not just stranded on an island, he's stranded on this planet all by himself. And like, okay, so it's like Castaway in space, but for me the difference is Castaway is like so serious and all that stuff, and I love it. I'm not bashing Castaway. That movie made me cry over a frickin' volleyball, so I am not bashing Castaway. But what's refreshing about The Martian is, I mean, you have Matt Damon's character who makes this choice at the very beginning of this movie that he's going to live. And when he makes this choice, like, you can see this character intentionally keeping his humor up.
I am the greatest botanist on this planet.
And it's like this way to encourage himself. It's this way to keep him motivated. And as he stops and he does all those little, you know, vlogs and video diaries, whatever, like video journal that he's keeping, like his humor in that, the reports that he's creating, all that stuff, like, I think it just made me admire this character. It made me admire the character's tenacity. On top of the fact, it took something that could be so super serial and introspective and all that stuff, and it made it more light and fun, while at the same time, I'm on the edge of my seat, like, how are they gonna get this guy off Mars? So, like, it just had a very nice balance in its tone, and I really enjoyed it.
I can't believe that I did not put this on my list, because that is one of my favorite movies, and I didn't think to put it on my list. So I'm a little upset with myself, but yeah, it is like Castaway in space, except much more fun.
Yeah.
And I love all the scienciness of this movie.
And it's funny because I'm not a sciencey guy, but watching Mark Watney do all the sciencey stuff, somehow he made that sciencey stuff fun for me.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but they made a guy who's in this hopeless situation, trapped, stranded on a planet millions of miles away, fun.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was a good mixture, fun and intense. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Well, my number 3 is Oblivion. This movie is, again, a Tom Cruise movie. For some reason, I got two movies starring Tom Cruise in my top 5. But this is a movie directed by Joseph Kosinski, who also did Tron Legacy, and I love that movie as well. But Oblivion, what I love about this movie is it's set in, I don't know how many years into the future it is, but basically what happens is there's supposedly an alien invasion, the humans win the war, but really there's this machine called the Tet, and that's the alien, and Earth is pretty much almost destroyed because the moon was destroyed and it throws everything out of whack with the Earth. And I don't know, I love anything to do with space, and that has something to do with space, having the moon being destroyed and really messing up with the Earth. And the whole aspect of Tom Cruise, you know, he's a clone, and that twist is just, I love that twist.
I thought that was a really good twist too. I did not put Oblivion on my list. I've only seen the movie one time, and I really enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the twist that he's a clone. I enjoyed like understanding how much this alien has really, truly taken over everything. But I think the part where it lost me was the ending. And it's funny, I've only seen it once, and I didn't like the ending, and I remember that. And now I can't remember it.
the endings, it's a little anticlimactic in a way, but the sound design and the soundtrack in this movie are just so amazing. The sound of the drones alone is it's just
I
so
definitely
cool.
agree with that. Yeah, the sound design, the visuals of that movie, like those things that did leave that impression on me that I do remember, all that stuff I thought was just really good. Well, my number 3, Demolition Man. Kind of like The Fifth Element, it's just a mindless, fun action movie. And I have a lot of fun with those movies that are mindless and just action. And I mean, come on. The fact that the franchise wars, Taco Bell won, so every restaurant in the world is named Taco Bell. What we mentioned before, wow, say that 3 times fast. The 3 seashells. Like, every time I watch the movie, I find myself wondering, how does it work? And then I realize what I'm picturing. I'm like, stop! Oh my gosh, I don't want to think about this. No! And so, like, it's just... And Sandra Bullock is great in this movie. Sylvester Stallone is great in this movie. And I don't really have too much to add to it based on what you said earlier, but... I mean, one of the things I just find kind of funny, the movie was made in 93, and I guess they thought 3 years later, 96, we would have some kind of technology to instantaneously cryogenically freeze prisoners and insert a microchip under their skin that reconditions their mind and their thought process. I don't know how they thought we'd have that in 3 years, but they thought we would have that in 3 years. And so, like, things like that were kind of interesting. And then when you skip forward to the year 2032, just as he's cursing, and then the cursing machine writes him all these tickets, so he doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells, so he just goes and curses to get enough paper out of that and goes to the restroom. It's like, I don't know. I just feel like this movie had so many things to me that are just hysterical. And Wesley Snipes as the bad guy in this, as the villain, who they thought they could control him, but they could not. I don't know. Just such a great movie.
I love that swearing scene because it's so funny to think swearing is outlawed and you get written a ticket for swearing. And that part of the movie so fun because it's Sylvester Stallone just having fun on the screen. Yeah. My number 2 is V for Vendetta.
This was almost on my list. It was almost there. Yes.
I love this movie for one particular reason. Hugo Weaving.
Yes.
His voice is amazing. And the scene where he's spouting out all these V words.
Voila! In view, a humble vaudevillian veteran, cast vicariously as both victim and villain.
I could rewind that scene and watch it all day long. It's so fun to listen to. And just there's so many parts of him monologuing, and it's so great. Natalie Portman delivers a great performance in this. Basically, the movie's about it's set in Britain, and basically it's just government overrun, and there's very strict laws in place, and V is the character's name, played by Hugo Weaving. He's trying to basically overthrow the government, and I mean, it's hard to root for anyone in this movie because it's like there has to be some form of government. You can't kill everyone, but it's like the government's overstepping their bounds at the same time, where there's no freedom whatsoever. So I don't know. It's an interesting movie, and it's an entertaining movie, and I believe it was a graphic novel turned into a movie.
Yeah, from like DC Comics and Dark Horse, I think.
Yeah.
Nobody quote me on that, but that's what I think. That's the people that made it. Yeah.
It's a visually stunning movie too, with the fight scenes. Those are incredible.
The fight scenes are incredible, and as you're talking about it, one scene that kind of stands out in my head is when they're doing the flashbacks as to how V was created. And when the lab, the building he was in, is burned down, just that shot of him, and he's been burned head to toe, but you can't really see it because he's standing against the fire and he's silhouetted. And I mean, like, shots like that are just absolutely epic. And I thought this movie was like very emotionally charged. Like, it was amazing. And like you said, the visuals and the fight scenes with V, they're just, man, I'm kind of like you at The Martian. I just missed this one.
It's hard to think of all these movies when you're coming up with a list, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing how when you're doing it with somebody else and then you hear their list and you're like, no, I should have thought of that. I love that.
I know.
One. Well, my number 2 is Avatar. Just freaking loved Avatar. I cannot believe how long James Cameron has taken on these sequels, and I cannot believe it went from like 2 sequels to 3 sequels to now what is it, like 4 sequels that we have come
4
our way,
sequels,
or
yep.
something insane. I don't know. Whatever. I'm on the first Avatar. I loved it. I just loved it. And one of the things I loved about this movie is, I mean, yeah, the story, it's a little basic. It's a little bit like Pocahontas, but I mean, every movie is kind of basic with its story. I mean, no original stories exist left. So yeah, it kind of follows this Pocahontas thing where the explorer comes, falls in love with the native of the planet and all that stuff. But as you're watching it though, like what is so amazing is I was watching it on the big screen, and a lot of times when I go see 3D movies on the big screen, it's almost pointless. Like, there's only a few scenes where it looks good, but otherwise I wasted an extra $3. Not so with Avatar. The way that this movie was shot, I mean, just visually, my jaw had just dropped. It is absolutely amazing. And whenever I watch this movie, like with my dad, one of the things that stands out to my dad, and he always brings it up to me when we talk about it, is how he loves the whole concept of, here's this guy and he's crippled, and then he transfers his mind to this body that is youthful, that is stronger, that could walk, that could run, that could leap, that could jump. And he's like, it reminds me of the promise that one day we will have new bodies. And so it's just like how that speaks to him. So now I watch that and it speaks to me that way. I'm just like, that is just an incredible thing. And the whole concept of him, in a sense, getting born again, because he's born into one world with its set of rules and how that works, and then he meets these people, and as he begins to be reborn in a sense, his mind gets completely renewed to a whole new way of living that's actually life and actually living. And so there's so many things about it that is just so intriguing and interesting, on top of the fact visually it's amazing. And of all the 3D movies that I presently own, no movie can top how Avatar looks. It's just incredible.
I love that movie too, and I'm again upset I didn't include it on my list, at least in the honorable mentions. But I only have 2 negatives with that movie. One is a really nitpick, and that's that when I saw it in theaters in 3D, because it's so long, my eyes felt like they were swelling, because it was one of the first 3D movies that I'd ever seen in the theaters. So I was
there
like,
is that, yes.
Okay. But it was visually stunning. And the only other negative that I have is the name of the element that they're trying to get being unobtainium.
Oh my gosh.
But the such nitpicks. Such nitpicks.
Yeah.
But it's still, like you said, just a great movie, and I'm actually looking forward to the sequels.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're going to go with them, who they're going to fight, but I'm interested, for sure. All right, so my number one, Logan. Now, I think that this movie is the best Wolverine-centered movie, and it's arguably the best X-Men movie. I love how gritty it is, how, they take the mutants into a different direction where it's like, hey, mutants are kind of going extinct at this point, and you kind of see how it all plays out when a mutant is kind of losing their powers. And it's just such a wonderful send-off for Hugh Jackman as the character of Logan and Wolverine. To have it end the way it does. I don't want to spoil anything because it did just come out this year, but it's such a beautiful end to the story for that character. And I don't think we could have asked for a better Wolverine movie, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, my number one is Logan as well.
Really?
So you and I have the exact same number one because
Yes.
I was blown away by Logan this year. Kind of like what you're saying, just this movie taking place in the future. What is it, the year 2029 or something like that?
I think so, yeah.
And so it's interesting because it's like they don't do anything big and over-exaggerated with the future technology. So when he's driving around this, year 2024 limo and things like that, like, the technology that exists in it is actually quite believable because we have stuff very similar to that, like, now in our cars and stuff. And so it's like, okay, that's actually really believable. So it's kind of fun what they did with the technology. But then, like you're saying, to take Professor X and to take Wolverine and give these characters an honorable end, it's like now, for the first time in this cinema history of superheroes, we have superheroes that have a beginning and a middle and an end to their story. Like, we know where their story goes, whereas most superhero movies end, and it just goes on to the never-ending battle. But we actually now know where Wolverine's story ends. We know where Professor X's story ends, and it's awesome what they do. And some of the best performances I've seen from Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. And it's funny, because I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound weird, but I feel like they had fun. Like, I feel like those two actors had fun reprising the roles. They had fun coming back to it. And there are a lot of really fun moments with Professor X being an old guy, forcing him to take his pills, and him sticking out his tongue. Ugh, see, I swallowed it. Like, a lot of really hysterical moments like that. And then beyond that, it's incredibly heart-wrenching. It's incredibly touching. And, I mean, oh, gosh. I got on the cry in this movie. I did. It impacted me. I had tears.
I was so close. So close. The little girl.
Oh, man.
She does so well. I was amazed at her performance.
I was too.
In this movie.
You know what's funny, and I hope I don't get flack for saying this, but earlier in the movie where she didn't talk were my favorite scenes with her. It's not that when she talked, she got annoying, but it's what this actress is able to convey without lines. She did a great job when she had lines through the whole second half of the movie, so I am not knocking her performance in any way. But I'm complimenting her on what a great performance, that even in the first half where she has no lines, she conveyed her emotion and her feelings, and her character was compelling without even opening her mouth.
She has a bright future ahead of her in the acting realm.
Well, there it is. That is our top 5 favorite future movies. What are your top 5 favorite movies? Be sure to let Mike and I know in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button and go over to Mike's channel, Married Movie Reviews, hit the subscribe button on his channel, and check out our other video that we did together over there, our top 5 favorite time travel movies. So Mike, tell us more about your channel and where we can find you.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, Durbin. This was a lot of fun. You can find me over at Married Movie Reviews on YouTube. Me and my wife do movie reviews and trailer breakdowns, and like I said earlier, we just have a lot of fun talking about movies.
Well, click that link and check out Married Movie Reviews and hit that subscribe button over there. Hit that subscribe button right here too. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.